All right. If you guys are on this journey with me for running or for fitness, then I think it's only fair that I share with you my health. Let's go back last year, 2022, around January, February. I am a sign language interpreter. I was in my classroom interpreting, and I felt the weirdest feelings. I started to feel dizzy, I started to feel nauseous, and I started to feel like something was just off. And I took a moment and I said, okay, wait a minute. Because I'm normally a very healthy person. I hardly ever get sick. I never get fevers. And at that moment, I felt like something was wrong in my body. I told my client, I need to go to the bathroom. Went to the bathroom. I splashed water in my face, tried to breathe, and that was not helping. I felt disoriented. I felt like I was intoxicated. I felt off. Went back in the classroom, continued to attempt to interpret, and my mind felt like I had a concussion, like I couldn't think straight. And in the field of interpreting, you have to be able to think and to process in order for you to translate and sign language into English into American Sign Language. I made the decision I was going to go see the nurse. Went to the nurse's office. The nurse, because it was maybe at the tail end of COVID, she was all boxed in and she said, "Hey, you can't stay here." And I said, "Well, I just need you to take my blood pressure because I just feel really very weird, dizzy, nauseous. Can you please take my blood pressure?" She fiddled around, finally finding the blood pressure cuff, took my blood pressure. It was elevated and told me that I needed to leave. I decided that I was going to take the chance to drive to the hospital, which wasn't very far. But looking back, I probably should have called for somebody or asked somebody to take me. I didn't want to have an ambulance take me, and then it's embarrassing if an ambulance come and all of this hoo-ha, but I feel like I'm going to die. I drove to the urgent care first because I didn't want to go through the ER. Went to the urgent care, and in the urgent care they said, based on your symptoms, you need to go to the emergency room. Very upset. I drove to the emergency room and I was seen 4 hours of being seen and having done all the testing, the CAT scan, the blood work, x-rays. I asked for a COVID test. This was 4 hours later. They gave me a COVID test, and guess what? The COVID test was positive. In that moment, I thought, wow, COVID is causing all of this in my body. This is crazy. Now, a couple years prior, maybe a year before, I had lost a friend from a brain aneurysm. In the back of my head, this was going on as a dialogue in my head. Maybe it's a brain aneurysm. Maybe you're bleeding on the brain. When I tell you that I felt like my brain was bleeding, I don't know what that feels like, but I had a headache and I felt so sick. By the time I had gone to the hospital, I could barely hold my head up. I just wanted to lay down. And after the 4 hours and them giving me the COVID test, they practically said, "All right, well, we'll see you later. There's nothing we can do for you." Still having all those symptoms, I had to drive an hour home. I got my things and I just said, wow, this is COVID. Okay. And I prayed all the way home because I had an hour drive and I still was dizzy. I still wasn't well. They didn't give me any medicine. So that was last year, you guys. Now, recently in May, I was in the classroom again and I was doing what I do, interpreting. And all of a sudden again, I started to have these same feelings like I'm being like nauseous. I'm feeling nauseous. My head started to hurt. My hands now are feeling tingly, feeling dizzy. My brain feels like there's something in there because I'm so foggy. I cannot think. And I kept telling people, I feel like I have a traumatic brain injury. Like My brain is not working at the speeds that it needs to work. I said, okay, let me take a breath. The same thing happened to me last time. Maybe this is COVID. Now, mind you, I had just come back from a big conference with lots and lots of people, thousands of people, and this is 2023, so nobody had masks on, and I felt, this is COVID again. Went home, took a COVID test, negative. So what the heck is happening in my body? What the heck is happening in my body? At this point, I'm extremely anxious and I feel overwhelmed. Why am I having these same symptoms and COVID is not the culprit? So I decided to just rest. That was the only time I had peace in my body, was when I went to sleep. The next day, I decided I was going to go to the urgent care. Went to the urgent care, told them all of my symptoms. I had symptoms of headache, dizziness. My eyes were very tired. I couldn't track. I couldn't read. Nauseousness, tingling of extremities. So they did all of the testing. They did a EKG. They did COVID testing, flu testing, blood work. And she says, I'm concerned because of the tingliness. I'm going to send you to the ER. Well, immediately I started to cry because I did not want to go to the ER. I told the nurse, I said, I need to share with you something, but I don't want to be judged. I don't know if this is anything to do with anxiety, but my husband asked me and I got upset. My husband said, do you think this is anxiety? And I got really upset. So I said, I'm only saying this because I don't know if this could be this, but I don't want to be judged. And she was so kind. She says, no, 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 no. I wouldn't judge you. I left there still with no answers. And I was supposed to go to the ER that day, but I did not. I went straight home, cried, got in the bed, sobbed. And my husband was like, are you going to go? And I was like, I don't want to go to the ER. I don't want to go to the ER. The next day, I tried to get up, tried to go about my day, tried to go down to the treadmill and get a little walk in. Oh, my legs were weak as noodles. All of the other symptoms still remain. And I just cried as I walked. And I said, honey, I've got to go to the ER. Before I left, I hugged my kids. In my mind, I felt like I wasn't going to come back. I thought that I wasn't going to see them again. So I hugged them and I cried. I went to my local hospital. Got to the ER. They did all of the testing, EKG, blood work, x-rays of my lungs, and a CAT scan with and without contrast. In the bed, as I shivered, they gave me an IV and they said, we need to give you some antibiotics. We looked at the x-ray and it looks like you have pneumonia. Oh, well, that was an answer. I was like, yes, that's an answer. This is why I'm feeling this way. Okay, pneumonia. Well, then the doctor comes in and the doctor says, well, we don't know what it is. And I said, well, the nurse said it was pneumonia. And the doctor said, well, after looking at the results from the CAT scan, you don't have pneumonia. I'm like, okay, so you can't tell me what's happening to me, why I'm feeling like this? Just, I don't know. And she says, all I can tell you is to go see the neurologist. So at that point, we left the hospital, still having the same symptoms, guys. And it was just very, very scary for me. I had gone from running 3 times a week to now I couldn't get out of the bed. I would do one thing of activity. This was in May. I would do one thing of activity outside, do some gardening, and within an hour, I was exhausted. And so I immediately went and got in my bed every single day. And so for the entire summer that I was off, all of these plans of doing things with my business and gardening and traveling, I just couldn't do. Some days would be worse than others. Some days I could barely see. Some days my head would hurt so bad. None of the medicines, like the Tylenol, the Motrin, would work. I went to the neurologist. The neurologist said, I think this sounds like anxiety. And that made me really upset, even though I knew it could possibly be it. But that made me really upset because it meant that I wasn't in control. He wanted to do a carpal tunnel test and he wanted to do an MRI. In the meantime, you guys, I'm 45. I'm 2 years past my last period. So I'm in menopause and my body's doing all kinds of crazy things because of the hormone levels. I go to my primary care doctor. They're like, "You're fine, you're normal, your body is healthy. Maybe it's anxiety." And having all of these physicians say that, really, to be honest with you, even though I assumed maybe this could be a little bit of anxiety, for them all say it was an anxiety, it really made me very frustrated because I felt like I had let myself down, that I could have stopped it, that I could have done something different. Finally, after probably 2 months of barely being able to do hardly anything and being in pain, the neurologist says, "Why don't you let me give you something?" He writes me a prescription for an antidepressant, anxiety medicine, and I just cried. When I got in the car, I just cried because I couldn't believe that this had gotten to that point. I didn't feel it. I don't even like taking aspirin. I took the prescription and I just laid it until one day I literally felt like I was just falling apart, like completely. And my husband said, "After the MRI, when it comes back normal, will you agree to take the medicine?" And I was just like, "You don't understand. You don't understand. Taking antidepressants, anxiety medicine is not just a one time fix. Just take it and then you're done. Most people who are on these medicines have to stay on them." And I was opposed to that. Not saying that it's a bad thing for anybody, but for me, I just did not want that to be the first thing that was set for me to do. Had the MRI. The MRI took about 2 hours, looking at my brain and at my spine. And after a couple of days, I got the results back, and thanks be to God, all things were normal. So now we knew for sure this was anxiety, possibly an anxiety disorder. Even though culture says mental health matters and all of these great slogans and everybody's talking about mental health, it hits different when it hits your home. It hits different when you feel like, how could I have let this happen? Now I know. Now I know I'm in a healthy place and I know that I didn't cause any of this to happen. Some of it is brain chemistry, some of it is habits, some of it is how I was raised. I take responsibility for identifying the triggers and avoiding them at all costs, but it's not my fault. And I'm not broken, and I'm not the one to blame. I just wanted to share that with you guys because making the YouTube videos, doing the business, going to work, all of the things that I'm called to do, it has been really hard this summer. From May until the end of July, it was a struggle. And I just wanted to share with anybody who may be experiencing this, who may not know what they're going through, and have gotten all the boxes checked from their doctor and they're healthy. It may be anxiety. You will be okay. I'm feeling so much better now. Back at work, I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to work. Back running, I'm just really grateful. Always, always, always be light, shine bright.